Tanya?
Yes, ma'am, you can start.
I think let's start. People will join because we have a tight 1 hour.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm Sunita Narayan, and this is a webinar we are doing in advance. It is World Biodiversity Day on Sunday, May 22nd. And we wanted to understand what is happening with some of the key issues with biodiversity in India. And of course, globally. I mean, for most of us, we know that the Biodiversity Convention was signed in 1992. We are now coming to a 30-year milestone of the Biodiversity Convention. When the Biodiversity Convention was signed in Rio, and I was there in Rio in 1992, so was my colleague, our colleague Anil Agarwal. It was very clear that the issue of biodiversity conservation was intrinsically linked to the issue of local knowledge, knowledge about biodiversity, and about how the benefits of that utilization would be shared with the local people, communities, and traditional knowledge would be rewarded. The issue here was not about money, it was not about profits, it was about both recognizing the value of that knowledge, but also in the recognition of the value of that knowledge, there was a deep understanding that that was the only way the world would be able to conserve biodiversity. Because we needed the partnership of the people who had been custodians both of the bioresource as well as the knowledge of its utilization for how the world would move ahead. Now, this subsequently meant that the world signed the Nagoya Protocol. The protocol was focused primarily on the issue, what we call today, of access and benefit sharing. Access and benefit sharing is a word that you will hear a lot today, but just understand it as an issue which essentially tells all of us how the access to the biodiversity would be provided and how the benefits of that knowledge would be shared. What has happened in the last 3 decades is very important for us to learn because we need to move ahead. The world is today framing a new agreement to move ahead in the post-2022 era on biodiversity. We need the understanding of the practice of the 3 decades to be able to move us ahead. And this is why the experiment in India is very important. India ratified the Biodiversity Convention. We ratified the Nagoya Protocol. We set up our own Biodiversity Act. The Biodiversity Act was a very forward-looking act which had all the provisions of making sure that we had systems of approval, systems of benefit sharing, systems of making sure that there was people's knowledge was rewarded, was documented. What has happened over the last 3 decades? That's what we wanted to take stock of. And I have with me some of the most important people who will help us to understand this, not just understand what has happened in the last 3 decades, but also help us to understand how we move ahead. My colleague Vibha Varshney has worked on a detailed analysis on what is happening in India today, and her analysis points us to what we really need to fix as we go ahead. And she will make a presentation. I then have Chandrabal Singh. Chandrabal is a very unique individual because this is his first public appearance, but he is a warrior and has filed numerous cases on the issues of wildlife conservation. And one of the most important work that he has done, and it is because of his case in the NGT that we have had some movement ahead in the last few years. So thank you so much, Chandrabal, for joining us today.
Pleasure is mine.
Dr. Reddy is with us. Dr. Reddy is a former Indian Forest Service official, but he's with us particularly because he has a deep knowledge of biodiversity. He was the chairman of the State Biodiversity Board of Rajasthan, which in fact led to the constitution of the Biodiversity Management Committees. And he is currently the chairman of the PBR Quality Monitoring Team of Haryana. But what I'm really privileged that we have with us, and I'm really thankful that they have taken the trouble to join us, is Kuttimanthan Kani. Kuttimanthan is a member of the Kani tribe. Now, this is a tribe which shared the knowledge about the health benefits of Arogya Pacha with researchers of CSIR way back in 1987. This model of access and benefit sharing, in fact, became the basis of the Nagoya Protocol. And it received the UN Equator Initiative Award in 2002 at the Rio conference. And Kuttimanthan, in fact, if I remember so clearly, was on the cover of Down to Earth that 20 years ago, as 30 years ago now, as the model for the world. And he and his colleague in this, Dr. Anup PK, who also belongs to the Kani tribe, but has received his PhD in molecular and biochemical characterization of the active ingredients of Arogya Pacha. And they will help us to understand what happened to this great experiment, this enormously inspirational story that we had from Kerala, what went wrong with it, so that we can learn and we can move ahead. So that's really the format of today. And I will ask my colleague Vibha to begin with her presentation. Now, this is also based, her presentation, the down-to-earth cover story on this is already available on the website. Am I right, Richard?
It is on our website, cscindia.org, and the link is in the chat box.
In the chat box.
Yeah,
excellent.
Can access it there.
Thank you, Vibha. And please go ahead, Vibha.
Thank you, Sunita ji. Good afternoon to everyone. I will give a brief backgrounder of the what we are going to discuss today. I will share my screen right now. So I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yeah.
So thank you once again. I will start. So India is a mega diverse country, and it has unfortunately 4 of the 34 globally identified biodiversity hotspots also. So we have nearly 8% of the recorded species of the world, and we have more than 300 wild ancestors of cultivated plants. But most important is the fact that we have traditional knowledge which is associated with these biological resources. We use these biodiversity resources as medicines, food, and for other daily needs. This makes local resources an important source of livelihood for the people in that area. Realizing this, India has been quick to ratify and enact laws to protect, use, and benefit from this biodiversity. However, biodiversity loss continues unabated and benefits are far and few. So we have discussed it earlier, but let me just put it in context again. So India ratified the Global Convention on Biological Diversity in 1994. It has, to meet the commitments to this convention, we enacted the Biological Diversity Act in 2002 in India. Just like CBD, the Biodiversity Act has 3 major objectives: conservation of biological diversity, sustainable use of biological diversity, and ensuring a fair and equitable sharing of benefits from this use. The country set up an elaborate system for implementing the Act with the National Biodiversity Authority at the helm, state biodiversity boards at the state level, and the biodiversity management committees at the level of local panchayats. To further support access and benefit sharing, India signed the Nagoya Protocol in 2014. As I mentioned earlier, implementation has been very poor. So by 2016, only around 9,700 BMCs were in place, and only 1,388 of the People's Biodiversity Registers were in place. This is when we have some 284,000 local governing bodies. In 2016, a petition was filed in NGT for ensuring implementation of the Act. In August 2019, NGT ordered 100% compliance by February 2020. The latest data suggests that some 98% of the BMCs and 94% of the PBRs are now in place. Down to Earth traveled to some of the biodiversity rich places in the country and found that these are just numbers and failed to actually help the communities. The provision of the access and benefit sharing, which is the core of the Act, remains mostly unimplemented. For example, Tamil Nadu, which has a total of 13,604 BMCs, has managed to enter into just 13 agreements on access and benefit sharing between 2017 and 21, and total benefits earned were just around 1.5 lakh rupees. In Uttarakhand, there are a total of 7,991 BMCs. Some 145 agreements were made, and these have resulted in benefits of around 528 lakhs. In Andhra Pradesh, 4 agreements brought in around 11 crores rupees of benefits. In Kerala, which is immensely biodiversity rich, there were no agreements and no benefits during this period. This data was shared by the National Biodiversity Authority with Down to Earth, and this shows that between 2017 and 21, only 11 states earned benefits from the use of biodiversity. So overall, we found that BMCs are not functional. Most were constituted during the pandemic and have no direction on what their role is. People's biodiversity registers are rudimentary and have been mostly prepared using secondary data and requires verification on the ground. There are very few examples of access and benefit sharing. According to NBA, some 33,369 agreements have been signed. However, details are not available in public domain. Similarly, some 148 crores have been collected as ABS by the National Biodiversity Authority and 24 crores by State Biodiversity Authority. But what DTE found is that in most cases, this money has not been shared with the community, as there are no guidelines on how this money should be used. So I will explain the problems with the implementation of the National Biodiversity Act with a few examples. So this is the Kerala example, and we have representatives from this community of this example with us. So members of Kani tribe of Kerala shared knowledge about health benefits of Arogya Pacha foods with researchers of CSIR in 1987. The researchers prepared a product and licensed it to an Ayurvedic manufacturer for further development. For this, the researchers received rupees 10 lakhs as license fees, and an arrangement was made for sharing royalty of 2% at ex-factory sale. Benefits were shared with the Kerala Kani Samudaya Shema Trust in 1997. However, all this arrangement had failed to take the forest department into consideration. Raw material could not be collected from the protected forest. Cultivation did not help, as there was no way of distinguishing between the cultivated and the collected material. Additionally, the benefits were going only to a few members of the society, even though the knowledge belonged to everyone. The second case is the case of red sanders in Andhra Pradesh. The tree is endemic to 4 districts in the state. It is a high value tree, but trade is restricted as a tree is endangered. The state has permitted the export of wood confiscated from smugglers, and the provision of ABS has been applied to this. To increase livelihood options of the people in the area, the state also allows cultivation of this red sanders on private land. However, farmers need to take a certificate from the forest department proving that this is cultivated. The process can be sometimes very problematic. So Down to Earth studied the access and benefit sharing arrangement between the Irula tribe of Tamil Nadu and the pharma industry. This tribe is extremely competent in catching snakes. The Irula Snake Catchers Industrial Cooperative Society in Kanchipuram provides snake venom to 8 companies. ABS agreement has been signed with just one buyer. The society has received payment just once, when a total of rupees 17,700 was shared with them in 2020. The next example is from Uttarakhand. This is one of the most recent efforts toward the access and benefit sharing. 25 farmers in Uttarkashi and 100 in Chamoli districts are involved in cultivation of medicinal plants, kut and kutki. These are endangered and trade is banned. Farmers need documents like transit pass and legal procurement certificates from the forest department to prove that it was cultivated, and a local NGO is helping them in this. BMCs of the village and the buyers are in the process of finalizing the agreement with the State Biodiversity Board. Farmers can earn as much as 1300 to 1400 per kilogram from kutki and rupees 300 to 320 per kilogram from kut. From the next harvesting season, they will also start receiving an extra benefit fixed at 5% of the sale price. So it has been successful to an extent. There are options, but it has not been experimented with fully. And as I said, there are very, very few examples of access and benefit sharing in the country. So these issues suggest that Biological Diversity Act needs to be tweaked. However, we find that the Biological Diversity Amendment Bill 2021, which is with the Joint Committee of the Parliament at present, might not be the way forward. Our analysis suggests that the amendments do not provide appropriate solutions to the problems on the ground and even defeats the intents of Biological Diversity Act or Convention on Biodiversity and the Nagoya Protocol by increasing access but decreasing benefit sharing. For instance, amendment regulates access only by foreign controlled companies. So this reduces the number of companies which would have to give the benefits to the community. Also, users of codified traditional knowledge are exempted from sharing benefits with the local communities. On the positive side, the amendments do reduce burden on the wild medicinal plants by encouraging their cultivation. This system needs to be elaborated further. So there are a lot of opportunities at this moment in front of India and the world. Biodiversity is being discussed across the world. The post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that aims to halt biodiversity loss by 2030 and achieve recovery by 2050 could be discussed at the UN Biodiversity Conference, which is going to be held in China in the near future. It is very clear that new learnings are essential for success at these negotiations. This is what we have actually tried to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Vibha.
Thank you, Vibha. Thank you very much. Chandrabhal ji, can I ask you now to give your give us an idea of what prompted you to do the case? How do you see, and in your view, what's happening with the People's Biodiversity Registers, and what is the way ahead?
Okay, so let me first start. I mean, if we have to go as per the book knowledge of the Biodiversity Act and as per the clauses and the sub-clauses and all that, I think, you know, I mean,
can you put on your camera? I think everybody would like to see you if your
sure.
If your thing is good.
So I think, I mean, you know, if you look at the Biodiversity Act, which was prepared in 2002 and 2004, subsequently as signed in the Rio after 10 years, of course. So I think we really missed the basic crux of what exactly biodiversity means. What really the whole Biodiversity Act started revolving around of profit sharing. But the Act somewhere could not really get into the essence of the biodiversity. What exactly is the biodiversity? So, you know, I mean, if we have to really look at the, you know, the definition wise, it's like a biodiversity, all kind of living variety of animals, plants, fungi, even microorganisms, those who live on like bacteria and everything. So they all form the biodiversity. Okay, while we are talking about in the Biodiversity Act of the profit sharing and knowledge sharing, and in return they get paid for and all that, but somewhere in the whole act there is no mention of the methodology that how do we improve the biodiversity. Unless we improve the biodiversity, how are we looking at the vision of 2050 and 2020, which is already passed by? The mission was to take effective and urgent action to halt the loss of biodiversity by 2020, as per the act, which was written in 2002. So, I mean, we are very kind of optimistic in giving the figures like 2050, we will be zero emission. So, but is there any scientific reason? Is there any scientific logic, or have you studied it? Or it is just some numbers we have to give to the world, okay, since we are making it in 2002, 2020 is still 20 years ahead. Yeah, so let's make a mission and let's give a vision. Okay, now, so let me ask everybody, we have already passed 2020, and the mission was to take effective and urgent effect to halt the loss of biodiversity in order. Have we achieved that? No, we have failed. We have failed dramatically. And hence, I don't really see the vision of 2050 being achieved anyhow. So I happened to read one of the article in 2014 in Down to Earth. I think it was written by you only, ma'am, on the biodiversity and how the Biodiversity Act is not really been implemented and not in this thing. That really made me think over. And then I spoke to my council and I started doing my homework. So while I started doing my homework and I started filing multiple RTIs and all that, and I got to know that in 2016, before I went to NGT, there were barely 6,000 BMCs, effective and active at that point of a time. I also tried to find out that what was the total income they have, these BMCs they have earned. So it was shocking to me that except Uttarakhand, which they received this fund of 1,285 in 2016, no other BMC had ever earned a single penny till 2016. And that made me think, what is the point of having an act which has not been implemented, which has just been made since we committed in Rio, so we must have an act and we must have this thing. So 2004 to 2016, 14 years, nothing was done except Uttarakhand earning 1,285 rupees. That was the RTI reply. And that was shocking. That was shocking. And then that's the reason, that's the time when I decided, something must be done. And I strongly believe that if you really want to bring in change in or try to protect any of the last habitat or the biodiversity and all that, of course, one way is to be directly involved, and the other way is the judiciary. Because at the end, the ball, at the end, everything ends at the system and the protocols and your laws and the bylaws and everything, and that's where it gets stuck. And that's when you can't do much on the ground. So in this whole act, I never found anywhere that there was a methodology given. Okay, if we have to earn from the biodiversity, how do we improve the biodiversity?
Yes.
How do we improve? Okay, so we are going to pay the villagers. Fine, you will get earned. But what are the methods that you can improve your biodiversity to earn more and more in the coming the coming years?
Yeah.
And that was the whole this thing. So and that's the reason why I just filed this RTI, and I went to NGT. Initially, when I went to NGT, I was looking like an idiot, a person coming from Pune and talking about the Biodiversity Act, which even today also, if you ask a person, a common man in Delhi, he said, "What is that? What is Biodiversity Act?"
Yeah.
Ask anybody. Ask anybody in Bombay, ask any urban people, and they are those who are getting benefited. In fact, the most biodiversity rich sites are where the most poorest of the people they live.
Exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The most biodiversity rich places are the most poorest of the people they live.
Absolutely.
Why? Because of the lacuna and because of the system and because of that. And I strongly believe that if there any change can be done, which is a long battle, it has to be done through judiciary. We cannot expect the system to fix it. And hence, I am a strong believer that change will happen. But yes, you have to work on ground. There are people, those who are working on ground, like as you introduced, Mr. Putty, but at the same time, you also have to fight with the system. You have to get things in place. While I'm talking to you, I'm sitting in Jaipur since Monday, fighting court cases on various issues of the mining going on in the Ranthambore Tiger Reserves and all that. And finally, the verdict came in my favor. And yeah, so that was today was a good day. And right now, currently, while I'm talking to you, I'm sitting in a leopard safari park. And that's why you can hear a lot of bird chirping and I'm attending from there. So that's the reason. So initially, when I went to NGT, they looked at me like a fool. States were issued notices, no reply, again notices, no reply, notices. It took 18 months before the NGT, the principal bench, got really irritated and no representation was coming from any state, and FIR was issued to all the commissioners, biodiversity commissioners. Arrest warrant were issued. Finally, after 18 months, and it was a Friday. I still remember the day. It was a Friday. Arrest warrant were issued against all the commissioners, and on Monday, everybody, 23 states were present. And then they made promises that we will do this, we'll do that, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then, paperwork started happening, and I kept getting these like 1,000-pager RTI replies and everything. So, my whole room got full of these RTIs and, all that. Reality remains is that nothing has been achieved. Absolutely zero. Absolutely zero. And look at how can you expect the Biodiversity Act to be, this thing, that in the financial year of 22-23, the total allocation for the environment and the forest has been 3,030 crore, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Out of which, how much Biodiversity Authority they received? 17 crore is the budget. 17 crore is the budget. Under Gram Panchayat, under Panchayati Raj, every village, they get at least 5 crore. At least 5 crore in a tenure of 5 years. And here, the whole authority is getting a budget of 17 crore. So this shows a very seriousness of our, I would not take anybody's name or this thing, but this shows very seriousness about our biodiversity and concern about biodiversity.
No, good. Interesting. No, thank you, Chandrabal, and again, congratulations for the work.
I have certain figures like Haryana. They have allocated 20,000 for each PBR. Rajasthan, they have allocated 50,000 for each PBR. How can you expect to form a PBR in 20,000 rupees?
Yeah.
So it's all on the paper. It's all on the paper. And today I feel so frustrated that I want the...
No, don't be frustrated. Chandrabal, don't be frustrated.
Oh,
I think your work has been seminal.
No, I'll tell you.
Brought the issue out. It is there. And I think what we need to do today, and I hope this discussion, and just bear with me, I'm going to ask Dr. Reddy and the others to come in. And then let's open up for a little bit of a discussion. How do we move ahead? Because I think we all feel the pain that is in your voice, that we need to do something. And the question is what? Dr. Reddy, can I bring you in now? You're somebody who, we have huge respect for your knowledge, your commitment to this issue, and you really see it from inside. Tell us, how do we move this ahead? Because right now, from the outside, it seems that we've made a huge paraphernalia, but the paraphernalia of institutions, legal systems, is not doing what it was meant to do, which is conservation of biodiversity and benefits to the communities who conserve this knowledge. So help us to understand, Dr. Reddy, how do you see this and how do we move ahead?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks to Chandrabal ji. My actual work in the biodiversity started only after Chandrabalji filed the case in the ANG. Yeah, Biodiversity Act was enacted in 2002. The rules were framed at the Government of India level in 2004. But in Rajasthan, the rules, Rajasthan Biodiversity Rules were framed in 2014. If there are no rules, means no implementation for almost 12 years. So the board was constituted, but the board constituted means only the ex officio members, only the head of the departments of the line departments like forestry, like agriculture, animal husbandry, fisheries were only there. The domain experts they are never nominated. I think only once they were nominated for some time, and then later they became vacant. But in 2018, when the NGT orders came, that time I vaguely remember only 10 or 15 BMCs were constituted. But NGT also, because Chandrabalji said, there was a gap of 18 months. So when nobody was responding, then the NGT issued a stern warning. So then we realized that the Gram Panchayats who are supposed to constitute the BMCs, they are not working under the biodiversity, state biodiversity boards. So then we went to the Panchayati Raj and requested the Panchayati Raj secretary to issue orders. And then Panchayati Raj issued one simple order saying that all they have to meet on so and so date, on one particular day. All the Gram Panchayats have to be, meeting has to be convened, and they have to take a resolution and constitute the formation of the BMC. That's it. With a stroke of one pen, and everybody constituted the BMC. So that is it. And we have completed with the first stage of constituting biodiversity committees in Rajasthan, 10,400 something Gram Panchayats. We have done it within one stroke. But actually, the main role of Gram Panchayats, BMCs, is to prepare the People's Biodiversity Register. People's Biodiversity Register is not just a list of plants and animals and other resources they have it. It is about the use of the resources and the traditional knowledge associated with it, and all the more involving people in preparing the register and getting them. The feeling of owning the register is more important. So this is the process which was envisaged by the pioneer Dr. Madhav Gadgil, who has done this basic work of doing these PBRs. So they have prescribed a procedure and a process for preparing PBR. But for us, there was a Damocles sword of this NGT orders. They said you have to complete the PBRs within, say, 2 months or 3 months of time. But honestly speaking, no PBR can be prepared in 3 months' time or 4 months' time. But some states, they have followed a simple technique of compiling the secondary data and preparing general PBR and submitting it to the NGT, saying that they have complied with preparing the PBR. But certain states like Gujarat and Kerala and Goa, they have taken time. They have visited the field all the 3 seasons and got the PBRs done very nicely. Now, I work with the Haryana government in Rajasthan. As a matter of principle, I have given in writing saying that PBR cannot be prepared in 3 months, and probably I was the only defaulter in the whole country. And I said that it cannot be done in 3 months. I need 1 year to complete it. It is on records. It is available, which I have done it. And now the state government is gradually doing it. Still, they are doing. In Haryana, what they have done was they have identified 7 or 8 institutions. They are called technical support groups, which are recognized by the Act, to help them in preparing the PBRs of the state. So there are around 6,500 PBRs have to be prepared. Now, as on today, the first round, the general PBRs are prepared by all of them. But updating is a big problem. When we go there are 2-3 key important issues. Now, the biodiversity, if you read any report like sixth submission report to the CBD or sixth report to the CBD by Government of India, we proudly say that we have more than 1 lakh species of fauna and 40,000, 1,000, 1 lakh species of flora. Like that, we claim a lot of vertebrates, invertebrates, and so many. But if you look at it, they are the numbers given by the BSI or ZSI or the agriculture ICAR, like that. But honestly, if we have to go by the village wise, who are the owners of the biodiversity, it has not been documented. Now we are in the process of through that biodiversity registers. The biggest problem which we find is there are no people who can identify the plants in the field. I tell you, in the entire state of Haryana, there are not more than 6 to 7 botanists who can identify the flora of Haryana. Similarly, the case with Rajasthan, there are not more than 7 to 8 people who are competent to identify the flora.
I
Now,
absolutely agree with Mr. Reddy on this.
PBR
Absolutely.
PBR preparation is a process, I said. First, the people have to go there, somebody has to go there and talk to people and collect the primary information. Second is involve the local institutions, including the schools, to collect further information. Third is involve the higher institutions like universities to survey the areas and fine tune it. The third is further advanced institutions should be involved in compiling the data, validating, checking with the existing scientific data, and finalizing. But to do this, we need lot of money, lot of institutional support, lot of capacity building, which is totally lacking. Like Chandrabalji said, it is 17 crores which is allotted to the National Biodiversity Authority. But individually, BSI, ZSI, they are all working in their own projects. But there is no single institution responsible for collating, collecting, coordinating, mainstreaming, streamlining all the biodiversity related activities. NBA mostly is a regulatory role for managing it or giving some grants, or third.
Dr. Reddy, your line has gone. Sorry, your last point we missed. Can you repeat that? And then
NBA.
I will ask you also to wind up.
NBA is mostly like a regulatory organization. They are giving some grants to the state biodiversity boards, and they are giving permissions, but they don't have the strength and capacity, mandate, and authority to collaborate, coordinate, and mainstream the biodiversity activities with all other institutions.
Very good point.
And these are the few things. And one more thing which I want to specifically stress, in 2012, the internationally we have got something called IPBES, International Panel on Biodiversity and Sustainable Ecosystems.
That's right.
We could not think of having such a panel in the country even after 10 years of that, which is very much required. Yeah. And last 2 years back, Kamaljit Babaji worked on a biodiversity mission that has also not seen the light of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I think, I'm going to now ask Kuti Manthanji to speak. The issue of the biodiversity register is one important part of what we do. But at the end of the day, the biodiversity register is only important as much as the fact that we are able not only to document the knowledge, but also as part of the law, the question was that if that knowledge is used for any commercial product, the benefits will be shared with people. Now, the Kani tribe Arogya Pacha case is one where all this was done. And then the biggest issue which has to be resolved, which is still not discussed, and there are two views on this, is how do you do sustainable cultivation of bioresources? Because if you don't do sustainable cultivation, at the end of the day, you can never really share the benefits on a long-term basis. And that's the big issue that we need to talk about, because as conservationists, there is also a lot of reluctance to talk about growing and harvesting, because there is always a sense that this will lead to over extraction and degradation. But at the end of the day, sustainable utilization is only possible when you can do sustainable cultivation. And when it came to the Kani case and the Arogya Pacha case, this became one of the biggest issues which created a problem. So can I now ask Kudimanthanji to talk to us, and Dr. Anup, you will translate for him. Please ask him to tell us, how did he see? He's seen the experience that happened in his own life, where he shared the knowledge, a product was made, what happened?
നമസ്കാരം. എൻ്റെ പേര് കുട്ടിമാത്തൻ കാണ. അതായത് ഏകദേശം 1987 ഞങ്ങളുടെ സമുദായത്തിന്റെ പൂർവികരിൽ നിന്നും ലഭിച്ച അറിവ്, അതായത് ആരോഗ്യപ്പച്ച എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ഔഷധ സസ്യം, അത് ജവഹർലാൽ നെഹ്റു ട്രോപ്പിക്കൽ ബൊട്ടാണിക്കൽ ഗാർഡനിലെ 2 ശാസ്ത്രജ്ഞന്മാർക്കാണ് ഞങ്ങൾ കൈമാറിയത്. അത് അവർ റിസർച്ച് ചെയ്ത് നോക്കിയപ്പോൾ വലിയ ഗുണമുള്ള മരുന്നാണെന്ന് കണ്ടെത്തി. ജീവനി എന്ന മരുന്ന് ഉത്പാദിപ്പിക്കപ്പെട്ട് അത് ബിസിനസ് നടത്തുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി തമിഴ്നാട്ടിലുള്ള ആര്യവൈദ്യ ഫാർമസി കോയമ്പത്തൂർ ലിമിറ്റഡ് എന്ന കമ്പനിക്ക് കൈമാറുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെ അവര് ആര്യവൈദ്യ ഫാർമസി കമ്പനിക്കാർ 10 ലക്ഷം രൂപ ഈ TVGRI എന്ന സ്ഥാപനത്തിൽ നൽകി. അതിൽ നിന്ന് നേർപകുതി, അതായത് 50% ആയ 5 ലക്ഷം രൂപ ഞങ്ങളുടെ കാണി സമുദായ ക്ഷേമ ട്രസ്റ്റിന് നൽകുകയുണ്ടായി. അത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ ട്രസ്റ്റിന്റെ അക്കൗണ്ടിൽ നിക്ഷേപിക്കുകയും, എന്നാൽ അത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ തലമുറയ്ക്ക് അത് എങ്ങനെ വിനിയോഗപ്പെടുത്താം എന്ന് പൂർണ്ണമായൊരു തീരുമാനമോ അതിനുള്ള അറിവോ ഞങ്ങൾക്കില്ലാതെ പോയി. അത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു അറിവില്ലായ്മ തന്നെ മാത്രമാണ്. എന്നാൽ
Dr. Anup?
Ma'am, can I translate at the end once you speak out?
Okay, but I think people are listening. They would like to hear because they don't know what's being said. So if you can translate this much and then you can say the rest, that would help.
What Kuttimathan brothers mentioned is, first he initially mentioned about how this Arogya Pacha was found. In fact, it's known to almost all. Like people from the CSIR went for an ethnopharmacology study, and Kuttimathan Chetan along with another person, they went along as their guides to this trekking area, and they found the fruit and they revealed about this plant and every other things. And thereafter, the scientists went back and they studied the properties of this particular plant, and they could find that there is having some immunoprotectant and anti-fatigue properties, and then developed the product called the Jeevani, which was shared to the knowledge was shared to Aryavaidya Pharmacy in Coimbatore, and they give 10 lakhs rupees as royalty in 1997, out of which TBGRI, the then Tropical Botanic Garden and Research Institute, which is the scientific institute for which my people shared this knowledge, shared the 50%, like 5 lakh to the trust. There was a concern about it because though Kuttimathan Chetan along with another person reviewed this knowledge was known to the community. For that to get benefit to the community, they formed a trust that is called the Kani Samudaya Kshema Trust or the Kani Community Welfare Trust. Okay, for which this money was transferred. That was a good initiative, though. But what he mentioned is that though we received 5 lakh, the trust was not in a stage to go forward because the lack of capacity is there. The capacity development was lacking there. How to go forward? That was the one reason. And that was the story he was telling right now.
പിന്നീട് അത് ആ പക്ഷിയെ കൊണ്ട് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് കൂടുതൽ അത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ സമൂഹത്തിന് പ്രയോജനപ്പെടുത്താൻ ഒരു അവസരം കിട്ടിയിട്ടില്ല. കാരണം ഈ പറയുന്ന 1987 മുതൽ 97 കാലഘട്ടങ്ങൾ വരെ അത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൃഷി ഭൂമികളിൽ കൃഷി ചെയ്യാനും അവിടെ നിന്ന് വിളവെടുത്തിട്ട് മറ്റ് കമ്പനിക്കാർ, അതായത് ഈ ചെടി ആവശ്യപ്പെട്ട് വരുന്ന കമ്പനിക്കാർക്ക് വിൽക്കാനുമുള്ള ഒരു പെർമിഷൻ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ട്രസ്റ്റിന് ഉണ്ടായത്. കേരളത്തിന്റെ വനം വകുപ്പിൽ നിന്ന് ഒരു പെർമിഷൻ തന്നായിരുന്നു. പിന്നീട് 87 ശേഷം ആ പെർമിഷൻ നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു. അവര് പിന്നെ അനുവാദം തന്നിട്ടില്ല. പിന്നെ മറ്റു കമ്പനിക്കാർ ഇത് ശേഖരിക്കാൻ ഞങ്ങളുടെ വനമേഖലയിലേക്ക് വന്നിട്ടുമില്ല, ഞങ്ങളുടെ ട്രസ്റ്റുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് അത് പിന്നീട് തുടർന്ന് കൊണ്ടുപോകാൻ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് സാധിക്കാതെ. ഇപ്പം വനത്തിൽ നിന്ന് അത് എടുക്കാനായിട്ടുള്ള അനുവാദമില്ല. അന്ന് ഞങ്ങൾ വനത്തിൽ നിന്ന് എടുത്തിട്ട് കൃഷിഭൂമികളിൽ കൃഷി ചെയ്തത് ആ പച്ചക്കറികൾ ഉണ്ട്. ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൃഷിഭൂമികളിലുണ്ട്, ഞങ്ങളുടെ പുരയിടങ്ങളിലുണ്ട്.
So after that agreement and all those things, what happened is till 1997, the forest department was allowing them to get these the leaves of trichopas from the wild also. But after that, it was banned because some of them cultivated few of these plants in their agricultural land or the reserved land which is allotted to them. But after 87, the forest department denied permission to collect these plant leaves. So thereafter, the company also, the Ayurvedic pharmacy also, were reluctant to come over this thing, and the benefit was ended there. That is the story till now.
Dr. Anup, would you like to add something to this?
Yes, ma'am. Because as my brother, my Kutumathan Chetan mentioned, two things are happened in this particular case. Even though we call it as a model, there are a lot many things to learn out of it. Because though the money was given to them, it was not mentioned how it can be used. So that is the one thing. Because I was talking to him in 1997, 5 lakh money for a indigenous community is a huge amount. He's saying that he's sowing that much money for the first time. So the situation is that severe, and they were not given any proper guidance to how to manage that money. Instantly, what happened is that the money, without any thought process, they bought a vehicle to travel for the people inside the forest area. So that's where the money was also, and the vehicle was not managed properly. They don't know how to pay the insurance. They don't know how to pay the tax and all things. Somehow the process was ended in a collapse. So that money was lost as such. The 5 lakh money which received them by this royalty was gone as such. And second thing is that I don't know whether it's right, because I'm sitting inside the forest office and I'm mentioning about them because the access for them to the wild, even though they are part of the wild, is denied at any point. So that is one reason, because he was mentioning like as someone was as Chandra Singh was mentioning how to increase the biodiversity. He was mentioning like they used to collect these tubers, wild tubers in various on each season, but now they are not allowed to get into the forest. So the generation coming next don't know how to and where these species are found. They are not aware about these species. And a couple of years back, we along with the trust made an attempt to find. They were mentioning like there were more than 15 species of tubers they used to have at different phase of the time. And we tried to collect, and we are able to find only 6 species out of the 15 they used to have. We tried at different stages, but we couldn't find. So, and one thing is that this knowledge of that intangible knowledge, like where these species should be found, that sort of things, because the next generation, people like me are not at all aware about whether these plants are seen at what time, at what space it will be seen, because we are not know. So like that, these are the people, they are at least they are knowing some little bit of it. After them, this will not be there, because that sort of species is going. So what I feel is that How to increase the biodiversity? Give back to these people. That is the best way to protect our biodiversity, because it is proven at many places. Like these are the people, or the people of these indigenous people are the best people to protect the land, because they only know the forest, they only know the wildland, they only know how to interact with the wild. So if it is given back to them, they will definitely protect it and it will be increased. That is the one thing I just want to point out. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Anup, and thank you very much, Kuti Manthanji. I'm really grateful that you both came and shared this, and I'm going to ask Dr. Reddy, Vibha, and Chandrabhalji to comment before I end this. But I just want to make the point that, you know, the reason why the Kani case is so important, and we must not forget it, Anup and Kuti Manthanji, because it was the reason, it was really gave us the inspiration on what needed to be done. I mean, Chandrabhal very correctly said that what is the the Act does not talk about conservation of biodiversity. What do we do? How do we do it? And how do we make sure that this moves ahead? This was really at the core of it, which was that we knew that there are people with enormous knowledge of this biodiversity, that if you could value that knowledge, if you could learn to utilize sustainably that biodiversity, if they benefited from it, they would also use it to either grow the biodiversity or to conserve the biodiversity. I mean, that was the whole logic that was put out both in the Act and then in the Nagoya Protocol all over the world. Now, you're very right, Anup, that Dr. Anup, that yes, the 5 lakh rupees would have just disappeared, but that doesn't matter. The fact is they should have got more money. If they had got more money on a regular basis, they would have invested, they could have invested into the conservation of Arogya Pacha. They would have known that their future is tied to this herb. We would have all understood the Kani story as about sustainable utilization and growing. And the point that you are making is so important, that if local people are today denied the ability to be able to go into the forest, we basically are going to lose that knowledge. And that's why when Dr. Reddy says there are no botanists in Haryana to be able to document it, I think, Dr. Reddy, we are looking for the wrong people. We need to look at the village people where there is knowledge. I can tell you in Rajasthan, where CSE has a campus and we go trekking, the local man who takes me trekking into the forest behind us can tell us every plant that grows in the forest and its medicinal value for the villager. Now, no botanist can do that, because botanists understand what is written in books. And I think that was the basis of Dr. Madhav Gadgil's enormous contribution that he made in talking about the People's Register, where the knowledge of people and their understanding of biodiversity would get recorded. And somewhere we have lost that journey as we have moved ahead. But before I conclude, I want to give all of you a chance to respond. I have lots of questions. I cannot do justice to the questions. But in case any one of you want to take on any questions, any issues, I
want to add.
Yes, Dr. Reddy, please, you start.
I want to flag 2 points.
Yes.
One is, it is not only with Haryana, it is with the Rajasthan also. You said, I think, that Nimrana center, nearby to that, your CSC center, some people have good knowledge about it. There are certain villagers, I did met them, that there are really knowledgeable people. But technically, there should be somebody to have that local name to be synchronized with the Latin names. That is the key, because internationally also, if we have to claim some benefits, so that we require that link. Secondly, in the Biodiversity Act, one of the major shortcomings which I have noticed is, for example, in the Desert National Park, near to that, there is a GIB, Great Indian Bustard. We all feel that beyond the Desert National Park, it moves into the something area called GIB Arc area, we call it. It is outside the national park. We have a Wildlife Protection Act to safeguard the areas which are meant for a species. But species outside the protected areas. Under the Biodiversity Act, there is no provision to protect something. And the People's Biodiversity Register responsibility is given to BMCs, but they don't have much powers to enforce any law to safeguard their own things. So these are few important things. And as Chandrabalji said, we need to get money to the BMCs for the capacity building and also to get the registers prepared, either by themselves or by engaging some technical support groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. Chandrabhal, can you respond? Any issues you want to take up?
Yeah, Sunita ji, I would not like to go very bookish and, in terms of the act and all that. In fact, I think the biggest problem what we are facing at this point of a time is we have so many acts and enacts that each act contradicts each act. Okay,
Yeah.
so Forest Act, then Wildlife Protection Act, then EIA, all contradict each other. My simple question is what? As Kutti sir said, that they are the last generation, those who are aware about these plants. Let me tell you, the generation which is currently living in the urban societies, let me ask, biodiversity, spider is part of a biodiversity and it has a role in a biodiversity. But what has been taught? What has been taught to the kids who are key? Stay away. Quirky, stay away.
Absolutely.
Lizard, oh my God, just get rid of it, just kill him. Ants, oh, just get pest control done. So the kids at this stage, they have been really mandated with the fact that no, they are not part of our ecosystem. They do not belong to us. Our house must be sanitized. Our house must be fumigated. So let me tell you, a time will come after 20 years from now, my son, my only son, he's doing his master's in conservation biology. I'm lucky to have this thing. 20 years from now, the kids, they would have forgotten how the spiders and how the butterfly they look like. Forget about the plants and the knowledge. So I think we have to move ahead of these acts and enacts, and let's get to the general public and start, awareness.
Yeah. No, very good point. Vibha, you want to add anything?
So what I would like to say is I just visited a couple of areas in India to do the story. But the kind of knowledge that was there, each village could tell me 20 things that they would like their PBR to have, but they did not have a PBR. The knowledge was there. They had no idea how to put it together. Even something simple like they were telling me about drought-resistant rice in their village. They were telling me how they preserved the straw from the grain and how they used to keep it up in a tree so it would not get wet. All these are traditional knowledge which can help everyone, even in this situation. However, because we are not making an effort to document it at the right time from the right people and trying to figure out how to commercialize it, or not exactly commercialize it, how to benefit from it, that we are losing all this knowledge. Because right now there is some awareness. Okay, it was a very good time that they could have actually sat down. Because of COVID, nobody could go out of the villages. They could have actually sat down together to collect the information, but not because they had no directions, and because in the country we need directions and money to start work. All this was not done. So we are losing out, and we are losing it out very fast. And I think it's very important that we begin again. Begin very fast and do it well.
Kuti Manthanji and Anup, Dr. Anup, anything you want to add?
Sorry.
Anything you want to add, Dr. Anup? Anything you want to conclude? I'm going to conclude now. So anything you want to add, anything you want to say, both of you?
Ma'am, the only thing is that, ma'am, this knowledge is losing at us alarming pace. So because we have to do something, because almost 99% of such traditional knowledge is gone. We are just having less than 1%. At least we should protect that 1%, because documentation as a custom, there are so many taboos because in my community, it is said that if you document something in written, that knowledge will be vanished or something like that. That sort of beliefs are there. You should go beyond that. As someone said, there is too many laws, but people like Kuttimathan Chetan or anyone, nobody is benefited from that. So that has to be done. And more than laws, we need awareness. That is the first thing. Yeah, thank you.
No, I think, and just to clarify to someone who has made a very good comment on the Kani case in the chat box, please realize that what they cannot set up a company, they cannot commercialize the product because the basic problem is they cannot grow it and they cannot harvest it because it is seen as an endangered plant and therefore it is protected under CITES. And the forest department does not allow access into the forest department for harvesting this plant. Even if they set rules to harvest sustainably, it cannot happen. And that's one of the biggest issues. So I want to conclude this and thank firstly all the panelists. I think what you have heard, and I can read in the chat box and in the question answers, people have really appreciated both the knowledge you have brought as well as the stories, as well as the fact that so much efforts have been made in the country by each one of you. I think that clearly is something that people have understood. But from my side, I want to flag a few issues. I mean, when Vibha did this story, I am deeply concerned. And I hope that CSC and Down to Earth, we will continue to write about these, investigate them further, and report on them. Because I think what we have today is that we have created a law, and now we are even doing an amendment to that law, but we really do not know whether that law is being used for the purpose that it has been set out to do. And the purpose for that law was very clearly biodiversity conservation, sustainable utilization, and for that, benefits to local people, because the idea was, and very strong idea was, that if they benefit, they will conserve the resources, and the resources in the wild will continue to grow. If you take the Arogya Pacha story, it's a clear reason why this act was set up, to say that here was a knowledge. And I remember, Kuti Manthanji, how the knowledge was found, how you and Dr. Pushpangatan and other scientists from CSIR were going on a trek, how you did not feel tired, how they felt tired. And when they asked you, why is it that you don't feel tired? You told them, we eat this leaf of this plant. And that is why we don't feel tired. And when they understood that, and then Dr. Anup, as your research has shown, there are properties in that plant because of which it boosts immunity and it boosts strength. And that was the basis of the pharma drug that was made, which was called, the name that you told us. And the idea was that here was a knowledge that came from the Kani tribe. It was their knowledge, their traditional knowledge. It'll benefit large numbers of people. In that process, that herb will get recognized, that herb will be grown, and we will end up benefiting biodiversity, people, as well as recognizing that knowledge. Now, all that we have lost. We have come up with this, we have not allowed sustainable growing. The forest department, Dr. Reddy, right or wrong, I'm not getting into it, but this whole attitude of the biotic pressure of human beings, not allowing people into the forest, knowledge is being lost, not allowing cultivation, utilization, means that you cannot grow these herbs. Everything today happens in the illegal. The entire Ayurvedic trade that happens because of the collection of those herbs, but the entire market is illegal because we can never track down where it has come from, and therefore those benefits can never be shared. So we clearly need a lot to be done. And I think the first thing that needs to be done in this amendment is to ask for every ABS access and benefit sharing agreement that has been made to be made public. To understand what was asked for, why was it asked, who paid, how did the money not get to the community? Should have been the first reason to understand how we can improve it. The second thing we need to do is to become real about the issue of codified traditional knowledge. I think it is absolutely right for the government to have put in codified traditional knowledge into the amendment, because clearly you cannot ask an Ayurvedic practitioner to be paying for the same, being under the same ABS system as you would do a modern pharma industry, which is using the knowledge for the first time. That knowledge has been codified. That knowledge is available. So, but how do you distinguish? And that should have been one thing that we should have understood better and done more serious work to be able to move it ahead. But the bottom line of everything that we are talking about today is biodiversity conservation. And really, we are failing completely because we have not understood that the conservation of biodiversity really needs the custodians of people who have this knowledge to be conserved. Their livelihoods to be conserved, their knowledge to be conserved, and to be respected. So I think there's a lot of issues on the table today, and I'm glad we've had this first conversation to bring this out. We promise we will continue to keep the issue of biodiversity and conservation and sustainable utilization and access and benefit sharing. They're all connected, but they're all important. And the biggest challenge today is, how do we take this learning to move ahead? My problem is we don't even know what this learning is, because this knowledge is not even out in the open. I asked Vibha, can you give me a list of all the agreements that have been signed by the state biodiversity boards? At least we will begin to understand what is the nature of the agreements. We will begin to understand why the money from these agreements cannot go to local communities. We will also understand what is the Biodiversity Register, People's Biodiversity Register. What is the meaning of it? What is the value of it? How do we utilize it and use it in the coming days? Otherwise, all these things are happening and none of them are adding up to the real purpose that we are all in this together, which is biodiversity conservation. So this webinar has been done for the Biodiversity Day, which is May 22nd. And we hope that we will keep this conversation going. And again, Chandrabhalji, Dr. Reddy, Putimanthanji, Dr. Anup, thank you so much for joining this and for sharing your knowledge with us. And again, please keep up the work that you do. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for